being almost fully dressed. Um, so this is the second part of Libra through the houses. And I'm going to do hopefully house 9 to house 12. And Libra in the ninth house. So what is interesting, just before I delve back into Libra, just think about the configuration of the ninth and the 12th. The ninth house is a worldview. It is our also religious worldview. It is also our higher studies. So world philosophy, the way we see the world, academic studies. Hi there. And this is also where we travel, and it's the type of traveling where you get to see the world, so you get to see the world from a different point of view. This is why it is also House of Academic Studies. If you think about, a physicist, right? Looking at light, then looking an observation, and this sense of observation at that which is foreign to the eye makes you form a worldview, and respectively your worldview affects the way you see or what you notice in um, in the observed phenomena. It's okay with being nude, but stay, stay. It's just a shirt. Now, yeah. So the ninth house is where we travel abroad, and it usually works with the 12th house in an interesting fashion. So if you are also a teacher or you have something to bring, we actually have, this would mean you have ascendant Aquarius. We actually have two astrologers with this configuration. It's Chris Brennan and Lada Duncheva. So they both have this configuration, and um, this means that Capricorn is your 12th house. Now, what's interesting about it is Libra is ruled by Venus, Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn exalts in the scales. Of course, you would need to have connection with Saturn and Venus there, but this configuration is two houses that work very well together, where it doesn't mean that you won't have harsh 12th house experiences, but they work very well together in the sense of um, the 12th is where you bring things from other worlds, and other worlds can be energy worlds, can be mediumship, can be the very far away lands and cultures. So think, your neighboring country versus the country at the other side of the world, or, the other side of the planet. Think the countries it takes, 12 hours, 18 hours to travel to. Those countries. And it can also mean that a person moves themselves, from side to side. Um, and so the land of other realms, it's always like that with the 12th and the ninth, plays a significant role in a worldview, whether we are aware or not, and whenever that is triggered. So when I did Spirit of Matter and I was doing the astrology charts of predicting the astrology charts of astrologers, of thinkers, scientists, I did look at the ninth and the 12th a lot. So the entirety of the beginning of Spirit of Matter was a lot about the ninth and the 12th house. Um, so that's just the way these work together. And it's interesting because then Saturn, Jupiter is not exalted in not Jupiter. Yes, Saturn is trying to do this with the ninth, but I'm not good with computating. Saturn is very good if you with the Libra. Okay, so it's exalting in the Libra house. So having, the 12th and the ninth related in a way where had the ruler of the 12th been in the ninth, it would actually be an exalted place. It's not terrible. Um, Now to Libra in the ninth. Libra, again, it is so simple to take the image of the scales and constantly think about what would scales look like here, because it's actually works. It's actually working, and so it means that, in terms of the worldview, it can mean that you can run into a situation where you form an opinion about something, or it's very difficult to form an opinion because you need all the parameters, or you form an opinion and then you see the dialectic is very dialectic because you see the antithesis of your thesis and you want to synthesize. So I'm thinking about the story of Chris Brennan, where he talked about Kepler College, and he said he started, like, they were supposed to learn ancient astrology, traditional astrology, and he was like trying to basically arrange a group, or he started to arrange a group of people to protest why are they having to learn that, what's they to do, and now everything he does is Hellenistic astrology. So he was one of the people who revived an Hellenistic astrology into the modern discourse. So you can think about that as a place of, I believe in one thing. Until I have a thesis, and it takes a long time for Libra to come up with a thesis, because you do want to make sure you know how do you measure everything, how do you balance everything, how am I having a balanced worldview, and then until you come to a thesis, you run into this the antithesis. So with the worldview, it can be transformed, but it's not transformed in like an Aries fashion. For example, I have Mercury in Aries, and Mercury is another worldview significator, and Mercury in Aries can flip opinions a lot. Um, but with Libra, it takes a while. It's not that you are it's not that you are dogmatic from the beginning. You need to understand all the little variables of how do I have a balanced worldview about something, and then you form an opinion, and then the tragedy, but also the interesting part, is that you will still run into the antithesis of your theory, um, because the aspiration is to have this balanced worldview, but then balanced is you know balanced is a frame in a movie, right? It's one single frame, and then the movie keeps on going because reality is dynamic, and so dynamically balancing your worldview. So it can create a situation where a person changes the worldview, and the reason being was that it goes to from a state of one equilibrium to a new equilibrium. Or let's say, let's give a concrete example. Okay, a person can say, "Oh, um, you need to balance the right to free speech with, privacy." Okay, free speech and privacy. Then you form an opinion. It takes a long while to form an opinion, and then you say, "Well, we need to have, let's say, a PC diplomatic," because it's very Libra. PC diplomatic, policy. But then you will run into an occasion where being PC is actually not not gonna work for you, or you run into a situation where, hey, those, like, not all people studied that for that long, and not all people study gender theory, for example. So are we going to cancel them, or are we going to educate them, or maybe we need something else to do? um, So this is one concrete example where you can have an attempt to balance something, then you say, okay, we need, you've measured, it's balanced, and then poof, you run into the antithesis, and you need to get into a new sense of balance. Um, and it can be very unnerving. And with Libra, it's you need to constantly find things to measure up against and balance. You need that. So it can create also a situation where a person delves into a different field. Like, let's say you studied law, found a balance. Okay, found the balancing. You found your opinions, and then instead of tipping it over, you go into medicine. And so you can have this opinion, that opinion. But when you try to hold on to an opinion, being a Libra, um, it is only going to hold for so long until you run into the antithesis. But then it doesn't mean that you change your opinion so easily, because you need a lot to be convinced that the new equilibrium is right. If you think about scientific revolutions and the paradigm of Kuhn, where you would need data coming to balance the worldview into a different equilibrium, and Kuhn saw scientific revolutions in this way, where you would need enough data together to tip the scales in favor of the new theory. However naive view it was of science in general, scientific revolutions, of whatnot. I think Feyerabend had it way better. It's just misunderstood. And also people want to run away from that, but I think Feyerabend had it way better than Kuhn. And I did Feyerabend in Spirit of Matter. So, yeah. So this is the worldview, but this is also traveling. With traveling, it can mean something like you like, because it's Venusian, you like luxurious, well-balanced, beautiful countries. Like Netherlands has its midheaven and Saturn and Venus in Libra. It's a flat land, okay? And not only is it a flat land, it's a very beautiful country. Like, I've been in Netherlands, I've been not just, Amsterdam, all the country. You go to Netherlands, everywhere you go, you can, you can point your camera at every place you go and just take a shot. Just be careful that there are no people there, because it's not something you can do. And you get a postcard. It is a flat land, okay, so balanced, and incredibly beautiful. There are also, with Saturn, there are the rules, and the rules, you cannot build more than a certain height, and so on and so forth. So, and a lot of rules and regulations, oh my God. That usually have a certain logic, but yeah. So, you may prefer to travel to such countries, or you may, or your worldview, or your, you may be drawn to such countries, or you may be drawn to thinkers that came from such countries. And this is also, with every sign in the ninth house, look at the significations of what significant planets did that thinker have in this in this position, in this ninth house. Okay, you need you have the need to balance things. So it can be that traveling is a way of achieving a more balanced point of view of the world. So you might want to see different people, so that you can come into an equilibrium relative to your worldview, which again is a part of traveling. But with the scales, it's about listening to seeing all the parameters, seeing all the things that you need to see, so that you can come at a decision of something. So that can be the traveling aspect. It can mean being drawn to luxurious, luxurious types of traveling. It can also mean regarding higher learning that you it can come about in various ways because there is also an emphasis on image with Libra, and so the image of the person, the having a balanced image, or believing that that would be a balanced teacher, can like seeking for the balanced teacher, for the balanced teachings, for balanced philosophies. Yin yang is something that you may be drawn to for that reason. Anything yin yang, um, or you would go into the philosophy of the yin yang more than just the martial aspect. Um, and so image can be something you can both be tricked by, or it's interesting with Libra, you can be tricked by the image of something, but alternatively you can actually see through the image of something just because of that balancing act. In terms of the worldview, you may tend to be, and think the other pole of Libra is Aries, so you may tend to be innovative in the sense that you bring the equation into a new equilibrium. Okay, the thesis, antithesis, synthesis kind of worldview. And again, balancing the scales is also the yin and yang, like the black and the white. Um, so even with reduction versus complexity of theories, you may experience these oscillations between, especially if you're in the Pluto Libra generation, the oscillations between being reductionist in your philosophy or seeking to reduce, seeking to amplify the economicity of theories versus seeking to see the contradiction, seeking to see the complexity, seeking to see. So you may oscillate between appreciating economicity in theories, or actually, then meeting the theories or being more drawn to. If you went to the economicity pole, then you would be more drawn to the complexity of things. So you could be the person who tries to explain things in simple terms, and then you meet another person who does that, and you will like, no, but this is more complicated than that. This is more complicated than that. Any theories of oscillation between one pole and the other as a way to explain the world can be something that you're drawn to, something that helps you understand the larger course of events. Anything more? This is also the house where you can teach, so you could have a certain image of a very balanced, very symmetrical person, um, but there would be something very contradictory about you. So you can try to teach something, or you can teach a certain doctrine, and then it's not so much that teach one, practice another. It can be, but it can also mean teach a certain doctrine, and then people would expect you would say this thing, but no, you would say the complete opposite about this. Let's say, trying to think about, I have it from the Aries perspective because my Mercury is in Aries. So you could reach the conclusion that is, you would think stem from one theory, and then it's completely another. You can come with a concrete example. It's like, I don't think it's correct to come with a concrete example from my own life because I don't have this placement, and I don't have Libra like placements. I have Venus oppositioning, Saturn and Pluto in my ninth house, but ninth house is Scorpio. So this is more like the general structure of things, of how things can, you know, manifest for you in the ninth house in Libra. So as a teacher, you can be a walking paradox. Sometimes it can be a walking contradiction, um, and that's okay. You can teach people to think for themselves. So that's one thing. Libra in the 10th house. So for 10th house, the significations, we have what you are known for, your status, which may or may not be your career, but it can also be your career environment, your working environment. It can be your boss or you as a boss. It can be the father or the solar figure in your life. That is, it can be the father or the mother that plays this, father role in your life. Um, and with the 10th house in Libra, again, it's top position of image, right? Because this is the house that relates to image. And balancing things can be a matter of appearance. So it can, while people may think, okay, Libra, it probably is a person who has the image of someone who is well balanced or is known to be a person that is very, I'm not saying righteous, but will arrive at a decision that is very balanced, that has considered everything. A person that will arrive at, a justice or a just decision, or is known to be a judge or known to be a person whose image is very, balanced. But it can denote that this person is very occupied with balancing their image. So, depending upon how Venus is aspected or what is the house, it can also mean that the person is actually, with certain significations, even prone to scandals because they have the need to balance their image. So they would be in a certain position where the antithesis would be trying to tarnish their image, or the there would put themselves in a position where maybe unconsciously, sometimes even consciously, where they're positioned where they're not being seen as, so highly. Um, and then they have to, with it, they take this position and then they have to balance their image. And because this is also a part, to do with juristics, this can be a place where a person might be involved, if it's, badly aspected, might be involved in all those silencing, like using heuristics to silence someone, so using heuristics to fix your image. And sometimes this is, sometimes with those, sometimes it is silencing, like using heuristics to silence someone so that they will not tarnish your image. Or sometimes it is the case that, there was something not right that happened to you, and now it affects your image, and now you need to do something. So there can be a tendency to turn to law, to turn to heuristics, to do that, rather than, with Mercury, if it would be, let's say, Gemini, you would reframe them, or, write a satire or whatnot. Um, so there you actually want to be judged and be proven innocent or guilty. Yeah, depending on what. It's a very intricate composition. It can mean that your working environment is luxurious. It can mean that your boss likes luxurious things. It can mean that, your father is, or that you are like that as a father. Um, so it can be, because it is Venusian, and it is also about enjoying the pleasure of life. So you could be the person who is in a public office, a public position, but has this luxurious lifestyle. You know, our president Benjamin Netanyahu had, our ex-president Benjamin Netanyahu had his son in Libra. I haven't seen his old chart, and although it was mainly his wife that caused this, but again, this, for a man having, you know, a son in Libra, the Venus part, the spouse, and this is ruled by the spouse. So it was funny. I haven't thought about this, but actually, the joke about Benjamin Netanyahu was that he was ruled by his wife, Sarah Netanyahu, and there was a lot of expenses for luxurious things. Sometimes like some just like ice cream or something, but just a ton of, you know, expenses on the name of, you know, ice cream or something. So he was criticized for the way he manages the wealth, and he had to, even right now, he had to constantly fight for his image. And it doesn't matter whether you agree, and it goes to the point where it doesn't matter if, like, the discourse is not about what did he do as a president and what do we agree with or what do we want to change, and each person have in their political party. But it became like a very personal, it became like the fight on the image of the person in the eyes of the people. And I think we didn't have like anything that even begins to resemble this throughout like the years of Israel. We haven't had that. Like it, although the world, I think they're probably Librans, but there it was like the sign is ruled by Venus. So, and then the person tries to balance their image, constantly trying to balance their image. Um, and being put in this position, and then, you know, the expenses of how do they spend the money of the public, um, all the while supposed to, you know, this is the main diplomatic representation that the country has with our regime style. So it would be the prime minister, not so much the president. um, so that's a Libra thing. um, and another, you know, I'm trying to think of other significations in the 10th house. It can just mean that you desire for luxurious environment in your career. um, uh, it can also, you know, with the Pluto Librans, there can be like power relations or being drawn to people in power relations or being in a power position. So power play can enter into that with the Pluto in Libra. Um, but mainly that is the thing. Image matters a lot, and you know, we usually have the meat heaven either in the tent or around the tent. So it can be a position of a diplomat, but even if it is a position of a diplomat, again, you know, Netanyahu, I'm sorry, like I'm not meaning to bash Netanyahu. It was just the example that came in mind. Um, it's just that if this person is now ruling this country, then um, the country will constantly need to balance its image, which is very true to the state of Israel. Not just under Netanyahu's regime, but it's very true to the state. She constantly has to balance her image in the world. Um, so that is another signification of that. So you would think, oh, it's probably a person who looks very balanced, who looks very luxurious, who looks very that. But then there is very likely to be an issue of constantly needing to tend to the image. And balance can also mean a person that can be polarizing. So that you might not be a polarizing if you know, if you meet the person, you know, one on one, but you are known. Your public image is very polarizing. Some people adore you, and some people can't stand you. Um, and this is something that can happen both with Pluto Sun combinations, but also with Libra, because if it is image and it is public, then the process of balancing is public, and so the public opinion would be diverse. So you have people that are just adoring you, would stand, and also with the public image of Libra, you would have a lot of people that love you for one moment and then dislike you for another moment, and with just as much ferocity. So um, it it can be a very tricky position to be in, because you can be very much, the people that used to love you, you can't count on them continuing on to love you. And they would always have a point there. They would always have something that, diverted them because you change. And it is also the big quality of a person with this placement is that if they are a diplomat or they are a politician, they are very much able to change. They are very much able to change. The difficulty is, reliability. But then that lack of reliability will just be because you ran into no data when you need to adapt yourself and adapt your image and adapt the way you represent or what you represent. I'm thinking also, if let's say if it's a football player and has significations, and then the Libra is in the 10th house, then it can be a football player that played for one team and then they start playing for the other team. If something happened, they started playing for the other team. It was very known for this team. Now they're known for that team, and they can be no less successful. So this is the 10th house. Um, Again, careers, of course, politics, juristics, even a sort of cosmetics, and then you can change, the way you do, because think about beauty, it changes a lot. What we think is beautiful changes a lot. Um, so, or even, how we consume things changes a lot. So with Libra, just can be a moral thing, for example. Oh, we should only have makeup that is mineral, that is not tried on animals. And then there is the nude, we should not wear makeup, which is very comfortable for me. We should not wear makeup, but then there is, oh, but what about the people who work in the makeup industry? What about, all these jobs that people won't have if we don't use these products? So that can play out in the career or in the consumption decisions as well. 11th house. So, Libra in the 11th house. 11th house is where we meet our colleagues, where we meet the friends that are acquaintances. They're not like siblings, but they are acquaintances. And they can be good friends, they can be a colleague and a friend. This is also where we have our agenda. So it can be ideology, it can be goals and dreams, but it is where we have an agenda, where we change the world, where we make a contribution to the large society. It is, conferences, when we meet our colleagues, it's conferences. It is the people we meet every once in a while. It is the people who follow us, on Facebook or Twitter, social groups there. It's more 11th. Sometimes third because of social media, but also 11th, where we have an agenda, I think, about activism. And so with Libra, um, this can be, of course, it's related to the 9th house, right? What is our worldview? What do we give the world is very related to what our worldview is, that the world needs or that we think it needs. Um, so Libra can mean, it can simply denote that you have colleagues that are lawyers, colleagues that are um, accountants, colleagues that are in the beauty industry. It can also, in terms of rights, trying to balance certain rights. Venusian, it's very Venusian. So dealing with, it can both mean that they are women, like women lawyers, but it can also mean that they are activists in favor of women rights or how they think there should be equity between, between the sexes or between different parties. So equity is a big thing, and it's not the equity of Aquarius. Um, it's an equity of between polarities, and this is important because this can be a blind spot for Libra. Libra needs two to compare. To compare, you know, it goes like binary decision, binary decision, binary decision, then put in that component, then put in that component, then put in that component. It's not like machine learning. Machine learning is more Aquarius. Um, and machine learning, you put all the parameters in, and then you have, you run the algorithm, and then you come up with a certain composition with the output. With the Libra, it's like the thinking process is more like binary. If I have like 7 parameters, so I take this parameter, 2 parameters, and then I take balanced, I add third, and then I balance, and then like you do belly dance, okay? I have this movement, let's say upper body, then lower body. So I do upper body, then I do only lower body, then I balance them. And then I bring in another because Libra loves that. This is what they came here to do. Okay, so it's also where Saturn's exalts, taking their time, okay? Trying it over and over again, the triplicity ruler, Mercury. And so with activism, in the 11th being a Libra, it is going to be a process. So it can either mean that the person is going to take time to decide what are they being an activist for. For example, I knew a lawyer who was a Libra sun, and she was talking about how we shouldn't consider hijab as oppressive. And she was not wearing hijab. She was Arab Israeli, and she was not wearing hijab. She was like, but it was very important to her to bring into the discourse that hijab is not necessarily a sign of oppression. We should be multicultural in this. Um, and that was, it was years ago. It's not. So that was a part of what consisted her voice. So she wanted equality, but she didn't see hijab as something we need to liberate women from. She was like, hey, let's take multiculturalism into the fact. So that was like going through 2 parameters. Then now we add the cultural parameter, and it can create a certain sort of uniqueness in the way that you balance things, which we talked about when we talked about the first house. So the activism can be unique to the way you are unique in the way that you see how equity should look like, how equality should look like. Um, with friends and colleagues, again, this is also a public house, so there can be an image thing. And the activism can be related to image. For example, if you take the position of victim blaming for people, for women who were sexually assaulted, then fighting for their image, okay, fighting for their image, and was a big part of the issue, because the image of a woman that was being sexual, or the image of a woman that went through something like this, and a lot of the struggle was something to do with, don't pay it, like what a woman wears will not dictate if she will be assaulted or not. This happens to women from all cultures, from all walks of life, no matter what they wear. So the coverage of the body, the image of the body, the misconception that that sexuality or portrayal of certain image or certain body type or certain dress code would yield more more tendency to be assaulted. They actually did researches and sort of like try to disprove that, to refute that in a Libra way, okay? Try to refute that in a Libra way. And that is an air sign, so data, knowledge, research that showed this sort of, that put the image of the statistics, put the image of the research in a way that supports the image of the woman, okay? And this is, by the way, when I thinking about my previous example with Netanyahu, this is a lot of what he did. Like his way of framing data was one of his greater powers because he sounded like somebody who knows what he's talking about. But then it's also statistics is a lot of aesthetics. Okay, I should do his chart probably. So, and this is another point of view. Now, statistic can be a part of aesthetics. Another example when they were fighting for sex workers' rights. So there was one page that was called like when he pays, basically when the customer pays for sex work, and they were taking out like they were taking out these the descriptions of customers in websites in forums where they exchange opinions about sex workers and so on, and of course they were taking what was simple to deliver when in fact the harshness of the reality was not found in the things that are simple to see, but actually in what was not shown in the page. So that was again showing the image. So how do we fight this? Let's show the image. Let's show you who is the customer. But sometimes it's not so visible. It's actually more intriguing and more intricate. Okay, so it's very difficult to do a black and white on a relationship, and actually the power of the abusive tactics is to do with what you cannot make black and white out of. So um, this is activism. I can think about the hijab activism as, yes, it isn't something that you put on your head, and is supposed to be a sign of your image as a woman. And then the fight is over basically the image of a woman, that a woman does not have to wear hijab to have the image of a person that deserves respect, or to have the image of a woman that is right in the eyes of God or whatnot. So it's a lot about what we wear, what we put on, very Venusian, very image, very you know, and in a sense, it's also fighting for our value, not only when we wear something that matches a certain criteria of society. So yeah. Anything more I can say about the 11th house, goals and dreams? Yes. Again, you can achieve your goal, and then there is the thesis, antithesis. So you can achieve your goal, and people usually say the problem with goals is you achieve the goal, you are constantly striving, and you're never satisfied. But with Libra, it's not a constantly striving, never satisfied, because you've reached something, now you want something bigger, in as much as it is you've reached something and now it seems unbalanced to you, so now you're looking to balance the equation. Um, so let's say you're doing a cultural thing or a musical thing, or you had activism. Okay, let's balance women's rights. Women can work too, women can work too, women can work too, women can work too. Then you have women working, and then you know um, 10 20 hours a day, and it's like, yes, women can work too, women can fight too, but what about life? Okay, what about life? Or women can be child free, women can be child free, is okay, but what if I want to raise a child? How am I going to able how am I going to be able to support it? So it's about reaching what you wanted in terms of the equity, and then once you've reached that, um, you you were fighting for your freedom to do one thing, and then you're fighting for to do another. So Um, it's a dialectic it's a dialectic battle of liberation when it is an activist role, or when it is a goals and dreams thing. So you thought that this would balance your life, and then you see, oh, there are other components that I need to balance my life. Let's say you're fighting to have the right nutrition, and you're fighting to have the right nutrition and workout and all that, and wonderful. And then you have relationships, and then you're like, oh, now I'm working with this body, and I'm paying so much attention to my body, and then my partners don't want me because they're like, you're paying attention to yourself, but what about us? you know so you're now, okay, now your goal and dream is to take that, take that next level, um, and balance, continuing on to balance your life with this component and this component and this component. So that's Libra in the 11th. Anything more? 11th. Conferences. Yeah. Well, think about Libra rules conferences. And in conference, you present something, you pitch something. So you try to make, this is important for science actually, because you try to make your sciencey thing. For example, I had a good friend where he was doing his PhD, and they worked for, with one of his instructors, he worked for hours on the images, the resolution of the images, because the images had to look sexy for the journal, and he was doing like, geographic stuff, like some, how do you portray the Earth, or how do you portray, the data, and how is it going to look good? And you think about that, you think about science, you're like, how is it going to be beautiful? Does my theory look beautiful? This is conferences, okay, with Libra. It's like, how my theories look beautiful. Are they right? Maybe, but they sure look right. They sure look balanced. They sure look great. We want, we see this curvature, we see this graph, we see this image, and it's a lot about how does science look like, rather than what science is. Um, so there can be that image, but there can also be that sense of genuinely genuinely being sciencey. So combating theories, or finding the balance between theories, is also, and combating theories, of course. What is the other polarity? It's Aries. Okay. So yes, and we finally made it to Libra in the 12th house. So 12th house. What's funny about the 12th house? 12th house is basically, I love to introduce it as 12th house is the sign of what you don't know that you don't know. So um, there are the things that you know that you know, the things that you know that you don't know. Okay, I don't know how to computate, or maybe I actually do know, but I need to remember. I was trying to give an example of chaos theory and computation, but it's something that I actually learned. Just don't particularly remember it now. Um, I know that I don't know what is the day-to-day reality in Japan. I know some of it. I can watch a YouTube about it, but I know that I don't know. And then there are the things that you don't know that you don't know. That's the 12th house. So anything going through the 12th house, you just have to surrender into that unknown, because now it's your blind spot is being revealed to you. For example, this channel began as channeling science. I was in the academia, I was a Me Too veteran, and I realized that what helped me cope was being more attentive to my body, to this, to that. And it began as channeling science, and I did exercises on channeling. And then I looked into channeling, and actually I ran into the many places where channeling can be biased. So that was a process of, hey, I thought that intuition is something that's more reliable actually, but not necessarily. This has its biases. Like cognitively, I knew this has its biases, that must have its biases, but I went with the experiment, and now it is more balanced, right? More balanced view of channeling. Um, so this is just the 12th house. The 12th house is going to meet you up with that blind spot, what you didn't consider. With Libra, it's going to be something that you didn't consider that changes the equilibrium. So the significations, the many ways this can happen, the significations, it can be channeling, mediumship. Maybe you were a very, dogmatic, sciencey person, and then you went through a 12th house transits and it's in Libra, and then you need to be exposed to your channeling abilities. Or somebody gives you channeling and you're like, fuck, this, like, what? How did this happen? Um, it can also mean places of isolation, or you could be the type that says, well, I always want to live with either a partner or roommates. I don't want to live alone. I don't want to this, and I don't. And then you come into the 12th house and you're alone, and you're actually less, like, you're actually happy, you know. Um, Although the 12th is crisis. So it can be that the change was something you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to live alone. And then you're like, but it's actually, I'm actually happy, or not, right? Um, so an experience of isolation, an experience of retreat, an experience of going to a faraway land changes the equilibrium. And again, faraway land, this is the lands you travel 12 hours to get to. Traveling to space, okay, space voyages are also 12th house. Um, it can be near-death experiences. It can be a place where, you know, where life is just not in your control. Um, and this is also the house of secret bed pleasures. So this is also the bedroom. Yeah, whatever your worldview about sex is, it's also the place of connection to other worlds. Um, so think astral experience, but also think in, the bedrooms and that part that is always intimate. Even if you are, teaching, about sex ed or something like that, that part that is you and the person or the people that you have these intimate interactions with, this is also the 12th house. And so any one of these topics with Libra can tip the scale, and kind of put you in another journey of trying to balance things. So it can be you have a certain experience. Actually, I can talk about the darker, and this episode should have trigger warnings by now, right? So this is a big trigger warning of sexual violence. Please, if this is something that bothers you, then stop the recording. Um, and yeah, if I remember to do the time step before you can, return to watch. But stop the recording if this is trigger warning for you. So for people who are like victims of sexual assault, they can have like fantasies or something repressed. So it can be dreams or nightmares. This is also the house of dreams and nightmares, where they have a dream about them being a victim and they have sexual pleasure out of it. So a sexual fantasy about it can be more like the eighth house, because it's something that you do know and you put aside. But the 12th house is not knowing that or that happening in your dream. So that can be very unnerving for people, even though it's actually quite prevalent and quite normal, because this is a part of the ways to process what happened. And also for some people that was your access to sexuality, and so you try to release the energy or to experience orgasm, and that's the way that you experience that. Or you maybe had, CNC, consensual non-consent fantasies, and you experience sexual violence regardless of your fantasies. It doesn't mean that your fantasy caused it to be manifested in this way in reality without consent. Um, so this is something that can absolutely happen. This, you know, the tipping of the balance between your conscious life and your unconscious life. This is why it's called also the house of undoing, because what you're not doing consciously, you can't control. Um, so Libra in this house is about your being unbalanced due to something you can't control. Or alternatively, it can also be that you have a sudden sense of balance from something that unnerves you. Okay, like this image of, suddenly having a sense of balance in your sexuality, but the fantasy was of rape. Okay, and it was in a dream. So this is also something that can be very unnerving, uh, reconnecting. Okay, so this is for the 12 houses, and I do have to finish again. I think we had just time to do that. So yes. Um, I'm Talishir on Twitter, Shliambad on Instagram, and I'll see you in next videos. These were Libra in the 12th houses.